but also I think kind of on a different level, just being loved for who they are and not what they can do. It's very easy to look at somebody and think for anything, well, I wouldn't do that, but you have to trust the person that loves that horse, Instead of applying more pressure, think, okay, what can I do to make this clearer to the horse? How can I set this up so that is their answer to the problem? You just have to do the best you can at the time, and as long as you're putting the horse first.
Welcome to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast, a source for riding and training insights with the goal of helping your horse be a happy, light and willing partner. I'm your host, Amalia Dempsey, a mainstream equestrian rider who discovered natural horsemanship, and now I help riders like you achieve connection and communication, so you can have more fun and fulfillment whilst prioritising partnership with your horse. Want to find out my horse training philosophy? Access the free Connection and Communication mini course at amaliadempsey.com. Now sit back, relax, enjoy the show and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes.
Welcome to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast, episode 12. And in this episode, I'm interviewing Lucy Chester, otherwise known as Haflinger at Liberty on Instagram. Lucy is a freelance instructor and horse trainer who offers lessons in groundwork, liberty and ridden work in the southeast of London in the UK. Lucy has always been passionate about finding a better way to be with horses, and having tried a few popular styles of horsemanship over the years and realising that they didn't quite fit her ethos, she decided to stop looking for humans to teach her and turned instead to her horse Teo. She primarily uses positive reinforcement, which is reward-based training, and a clicker is her tool of choice. She says that being able to mark an exact behaviour is so valuable and easy for the horse to understand. She is passionate about giving horses autonomy so they have a voice and participate as equals in sessions. She teaches clients of all ages and from all disciplines. She says having a good relationship with your horse makes you safer, perform better, and have more fun. It is so much more enjoyable when you do things together in harmony. Doing groundwork doesn't mean you can't ride, and it doesn't mean you need to ride bareback or without a bit. It's about your mindset and how you ride or work with your horse, not what you use. Lucy teaches people with full tack as well as those without any. The principles are the same. In this interview, we dive into Lucy's horsemanship journey, how she got into positive reinforcement with her horse Teo, who simply wouldn't handle any pressure, her tips for separation anxiety, Teo's joint problems, why she does use a bit despite feeling the pressure to not use one, as usual, the controversial questions, who inspires her, and so much more. I know you're going to love this interview. Before we get started, I just need to apologize again about the audio quality. Unfortunately, there is an echo sometimes after I talk, which sounds like there's a monster repeating what I have to say. It's just some strange echo that happened at the time of the recording and I couldn't fix it. So I'm sorry about this. One day I will get the audio perfect, but until then, I hope that you'll forgive me. And I know that the content is super valuable, so I know you're going to love it. And let's get started with my interview with Lucy Chester on the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. Okay, welcome Lucy to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sure that our listeners are going to get so much out of today's conversation. So thank you once again and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's get stuck into the first question. So first, can you tell us about your horsemanship journey to date, when you got into horses and what has led you to where you are today?
So I got into horses when I was 7. I started riding, although I begged my parents from age 2, but they just couldn't afford for me to have lessons. And then I got into kind of horsemanship when I was about 9. I went to a local county fair and watched somebody doing a demo in a round pen. And I read loads of books after that. For birthdays and things, I would just ask, but there was a book called Whispering Back. And then I moved into natural horsemanship with share ponies that I had, followed various different mainstream methods. And then when I bought Teo, I moved into positive reinforcement because he just couldn't handle pressure. So he has been my greatest teacher.
Wow, that's so interesting. I also came from a non-horsey family and had to beg my parents for a horse. So we're very lucky that our parents gave in a way. And I just wanted to know I know you said a few different types of horsemanship. Do you know what methods they were? Can you let us know, or can you not remember? Or
well, I tried so many different things. So I read loads of different books by kind of mainstream and then also more local people.
Mm-hmm.
But I went to Monty Roberts' demos with friends when I was younger, because I'm based quite near London, so we get quite a few big people come here. And I followed Pirelli for probably 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then, since then I've moved on.
Wow. And I know that it was Teo that kind of, I guess, led you to positive reinforcement, but was there someone in particular that inspired you, or did you just stumble across it, or why did you think, maybe I should try positive reinforcement now?
Well, I think I'd always used it to an extent. I've always used food and training. I was actually quite badly bullied for that by some ladies on our yard that were very much the other end of the spectrum. So I was trying to use both for a long time. And I guess I've just been inspired by so many people, mostly from Instagram, who were using positive reinforcement, like my friend Menia, who is Nornia on Instagram. She was a big inspiration for me. And just there's so many people out there doing amazing things. And I guess tried different things with Teo, and that's what suited him best.
Instagram is so good for that, and social media in general, because we can get inspiration from people all over the world that previously we wouldn't have had access to. And I guess now those traditional kind of training methods are being challenged in a way, because we're able to reach more people with more positive methods. So that's fantastic. Could you let us know what a day in the life of Lucy looks like?
Well, at the moment we're in lockdown, so I'm not able to work, but it means I get to spend loads of time with Teo. So kind of in the afternoons I go down and do all the chores, the poo picking, the mucking out, and then I try and exercise him most days. But normally if I'm teaching, I'm kind of out from the crack of dawn doing back-to-back lessons, and then doing Teo as well. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to some normality.
Yes. I suppose there is a bit of a silver lining there, though, in that you're able to spend more time with Teo. So that's good. Yeah,
it's been amazing, and more time studying and learning and things. So it's been nice to have a rest, because my life is pretty hectic normally. So it's not been too bad.
Yeah, and when you do have your kind of normal day-to-day routine, do you struggle to fit Teo in, or do you try and fit him in first, or how do you have boundaries around that?
Yeah, it's really tricky. I usually give him, if I've got a big teaching day, he'll have the day off, and I pay to have him looked after, because it's just too much. I've got chronic fatigue anyway, so I need to be careful. But I'll usually still just go down and check him and say hello, because I can't have a day. He's the best part of the day. But I often feel quite guilty, because I spend all my energy with other people and their horses, and then I don't have so much left for him. But kind of, I think following lockdown and all this time, I'm going to try and balance it a bit better, because that's the whole point, isn't it? It's, your horse and your time, and he needs a lot of work because of his joint issues and things, so I need to keep him mobile, really.
Yeah. It's funny, because my husband knows when I haven't had any horse time, because I'm in a really bad mood in terms of my own horses. He's like, you didn't get to ride today, did you? And I'm like, no, can you tell?
But you feel guilty, it's hard.
Yeah. Is Teo the only horse that you have, or do you have some other horses? And can you tell us a little bit more about Teo or all of your other horses?
So I just have Teo, and he is quite enough for any one person. He is very high maintenance. He was a problem pony when I bought him, so he needs a lot to kind of keep him happy and settled. I have to make sure he's in a really strict routine. He had severe separation anxiety when I got him, so I always need to make sure he's got a friend, and that I'm kind of, by taking him out hacking and taking him to the arena on his own, you know, that's kind of building his confidence away from them. If he doesn't leave them for a certain period, he can get attached again. So he's quite neurotic, I guess, but he's also highly intelligent. He's such a great horse to work with because he makes everything so obvious. You know, there's no, if he says no, you know, it's black and white. So that's why I've learned so much from him, I think. But he's also just the most amazing horse. He's so forgiving and so loyal. You know, and he always delivers. You know, he can be saying no to me all the time, and then if somebody's coming to watch, he's like, yeah, I'll do everything.
Well, that works out well. Normally it's the other way around.
I know, but that's true actually, but I think he knows when it's important.
He likes to perform for an audience, maybe.
He actually does. I'm not joking. He there's a camera and he is in their face, kind of get this side. He loves it.
That's so good. And obviously you've got to quite a good level with him. I'm assuming he's the horse all over your Instagram. So even though he was a problem horse and he's had issues, it seems like you've been able to work through a lot of that. What was it that drew you to Teo? Like, did you get him because he was a problem horse, or was he given to you? Like, why did you actually get him?
Well, I was looking for a young Haflinger gelding, and I tried quite a few and just didn't click with them. And with him, it just sounds so kind of cringy, but I just knew he was my horse. As soon as I sat on him, I think I just burst into tears, which is mortifying because I'm not normally someone that cries, but I'd lost another horse previous to that, who I love very much, and he just seemed like the next right horse. I knew he had problems, although they weren't disclosed, but it was obvious. He bolted with me a number of times, and I was a bit arrogant at that point, having done quite a bit of horsemanship. I thought, oh, you know, it's nothing I can't fix, he's just napping. But it was so much deeper than that. He had so much trauma. But yeah, and he's so cute. Like, he's such a nice looking horse as well. I think, you know, I just met him, was like, yeah, that's my horse.
He is very handsome. And can you tell us about the Haflinger breed? Do they have any specific traits or quirks? And what is it that you love about them? Like, obviously you wanted to get one, so there was something about the breed that you liked. Can you tell us more? I haven't had much to do with them, but apart from they look amazing.
Yeah. Well, over here, if you say to anyone Haflinger, you can guarantee they will tell you a story about some bolshy, rude, difficult Haflinger. We actually had a dressage coach come onto our yard once, and she took one look at Teo and said, how naughty is that one? They do have a bit of a reputation, because, I mean, they're just quirky, but it's not, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think they just very much know their own mind, so they can either work with you or against you, which is very much what I experienced with Teo. And once you kind of win their trust and you kind of just prove to them that you are fun and they can have a good time with you and that you'll keep them safe, they will literally do anything for you. And I think that's why they say they're the golden horse with the golden heart, and that is so cheesy, but it's so true. You know, once I'd kind of got past a certain point with him, he just was like, I trust you with my life, kind of thing. He lay down and went to sleep next to me.
That's so nice.
It was so nice. And for him, he's such a stress head with the herd. It kind of, I really felt at that point like it was him saying, you know, you're the next best thing, which was huge. And I just love them. I feel very safe with them. I work with a number of Haflingers now, and I first fell in love with them when I went to Austria when I was 14, and we rode them through the mountains, and I just felt 100% safe. You know, they're lovely horses. I think they're awesome. Just cheeky.
Yeah. They sound challenging, but very nice. We don't really have too many of them over here in Australia, but it's on my bucket list of horses. Like, I've got all these breeds that I'd love to have one day. And I have Haflingers on there. So
definitely, they're great.
So do you have a mantra that you like to live by?
Yes, work to live, don't live to work. Because
I like that one.
Yeah, I'm a workaholic, so I think it's very easy to, like I said, trying to balance time, Teo, with clients. I think it's so important for happiness, like you said, and for them to make sure that you're kind of just living in the moment and not stressing all the time about how much you have to do. I used to work in the film industry, and I really fell into that trap. And then when I bought Teo, he's kind of the one that made me realise that just was not healthy. So yeah, that's from him really, that one.
Yeah, it's funny how horses teach us how we need to be better humans in our everyday life.
Yeah, they do, honestly, and I'd always heard that, and I never really understood it until I bought him and realised actually, there's so many lessons here, not just about horsemanship.
Yeah, that's so interesting. But easier said than done, right? Like, it's so easy to overwork yourself, overwhelm yourself, and it's hard to get that kind of happy balance.
Especially with social media, it never ends. You can.
Oh, yeah.
I always feel like I've got being pulled all over the place by different things that I need to do, and
this podcast, which you said yes to.
No, I love this kind of thing. It's great to meet people around the world.
But you do have quite a large Instagram account, so I'd imagine that would take up a bit of time as well, with lots of comments and messages and that sort of thing. So
I was just going to say, I've definitely stepped back a little bit from it, because it's so much, and you put so much into it, and I love just connecting with people. So I'm trying to limit my time on there. I was spending way too much time on it before.
Yeah, that's good. Sounds like a common theme for you, like stepping back and slowing down at the moment.
Yeah.
So can you tell us, do you compete, or have you got any ambitions of competitive riding with Teo?
No, I don't compete. I would if he enjoyed it, but I think because of his kind of separation anxiety that runs really deep, it just would cause him too much stress. The idea of putting him in a warm-up arena, I can't. And with his joint problems as well, I bought him to show jump. I mean, not anything spectacular, because he is 14-1 and a Haflinger, but I did want to go out and do some low-level things, but he can't cope with that. Even when we're out hacking, if we spot another horse, he kind of gets het up over it. So yeah, I think that's not something I can do with him, but maybe some online things or kind of just at our yard I would do with him. But no, one day I hope I can with a future horse, definitely.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like it's something that's like a priority for you at the moment. This isn't on the list of questions, but since you brought it up, I wondered if you could tell us how you have worked through Teo's separation anxiety. Have you got any tips for our listeners around that?
Yeah, oh gosh, I mean, he's very extreme. I have found that having a routine really helps. And with him, I think initially I just brought him out of the field because it was bringing him away from the herd that was the problem. And I would just increase the distance each day that I brought him in. So I think initially it was literally 2 meters out of the gate, and then I would give him a feed or a carrot in a bucket or something really positive, and then I would put him straight back. So I think a lot of the fear came from, you're taking me away and I'm not confident that I'm going to go back. So it was just kind of gradually building that up. And actually, once I got him onto the yard and could give him a feed, it kind of, that opened up a big barrier for him, and he got a lot better from that point. But what I do with a lot of clients' horses is I'll use targeting. So I'll put cones, especially if it's more important that you can't wait weeks like I could, because he was just out in a field and there was no pressure at the time. But sometimes the horses have to come in for treatments or the farrier or something, so you can kind of speed up the process by putting cones. So they go to each cone, then they have to touch it and then get a click and a treat, and then they go back, and you can just build it up. And that's helped with quite a few of them as well.
Yeah,
just making it kind of taking their mind off it as well, keeping their brain engaged is important, because I think it escalates really quickly. You know, they feel a bit nervous and then it just grows and grows and grows. And if you can just interrupt that, then it can help. But it's something I always will struggle with him, I think, in certain situations.
Yeah, wow. And I think a lot of people do actually struggle with that. And people probably don't really like to admit it, you know, but often I'll get called out for lessons with a horse that has a bit of separation anxiety, and I have a same but different system to you. But it is about, you know, getting a little bit closer each time and not having the expectation of, oh, we've got to get to the arena today. It's like, no, we need to respect the horse's fear thresholds and work with what they're comfortable with, and then retreat, go back to the safe place, and then go a little bit better the next session or the next day. So I think it would be good for people to hear that, because, you know, people must think sometimes like, oh, I can't even get my horse from the paddock to the stable or to the arena or wherever they need to go. And then I guess that pressure from outside influences, they just think, oh, I'll just get there, you know, I'll just make it happen, and then it only escalates, like you say.
Completely.
So, now the next question is, I guess a little bit related to that. What do you think makes a happy horse?
So I think a happy horse is a horse that has all his needs met. And I know that is for Teo 100% the case. You know, I can do everything right, but if he's not getting enough turnout or he's not getting enough food, then he's going to be stressed. But also I think kind of on a different level, just being loved for who they are and not what they can do. I think they really appreciate that. For a long time, I was frustrated because of Teo's joint problems and his behavioural problems, that I couldn't do what I wanted to do with him. And, you know, I was frustrated. I didn't know on which day how comfortable he would be. And it got in the way of actually his personality. Like, his joint problems aside, he's an amazing horse. So it doesn't matter that we can just walk. And I think kind of coming to terms with that really made him happier, because if you have expectations on them, they feel that and disappointment. And then that's awful to say that, but at the time, you know, I'd bought a young horse, I wanted to progress him, and it was really disappointing, and I felt sorry for him that he's young and having all these problems. And I would not change him for the world now. It's irreplaceable.
That's so nice. And how are you managing his joint problems? What's your strategy?
Well, putting a lot of money into him. Everything that I have. I just, you know, like I said, reducing expectations. We do little but often. I hack him a lot. I walk on foot for good portions of that, so I'm not kind of adding any extra weight for long periods of time. I do a lot of groundwork as well, liberty and things, focusing on, I've been really inspired by Kathy Sierra of Panther Flows. I've done 2 of her courses now.
Yes, I've got one of her courses, the pain science one.
It's amazing. She honestly, it was a game changer for Teo. 4 years ago, he was ready to be retired, and he's still in work kind of 5-6 days a week now. Using that, kind of keeping him strong, really high grade joint supplements, keeping his weight down is really important.
Have you got a foam mat?
No, they're so expensive. This is the problem.
I know, I got mine off eBay.
Did
you? Expensive, but like it was kind of the same price as the course, but I was like, oh, it looks like so much fun, so I got one and I've been playing with it.
Let's do it. No, it's on my list. I really do need to get one. It's just, I've just spent, and because I've been in lockdown, I haven't been able to work very much this year. We've been locked down so much. But it's definitely on my list. I think they are really useful tools.
So I'd like to know, how would you summarize your own personal training approach or philosophy with horses? And I think you've already spoken about positive reinforcement. Can you elaborate on like your own style?
I think it's always changing and evolving depending on which horse because you must know the same. You work with 10 horses and what you're doing works for 9 of them, and then you get to one and you have to find something else that works. So I don't know, I guess it's just positive reinforcement and adaptable. I am really obviously very science-based with all of it, but also I really am into the spiritual side. I think energy work and mindfulness are really important components of horsemanship, kind of thinking about your breathing when you're with them, your mindset. So it's some weird mix of science and woo-woo, I think that's what they call it.
I like that.
Being adaptable, like you must find it as well. It's just, you're constantly learning and thinking. And, you know, if I look at my training approach even a year ago, it's different to now. So, yeah, and I think that's important too, is just keeping an open mind about everything.
Absolutely. Yes, I do think you need to stay open-minded about everything and be ready to adapt and change depending on the horse that's in front of you. And I feel the same as you. How I trained a year ago is different to today, and it will probably be different in another year's time. So we're just constantly evolving. And I don't think that will ever end. I don't think you ever get to a point where you're like, I know it all now. Like it just
I agree. I agree.
So what advice do you think people should ignore when it comes to horses?
Well, I actually, thinking about this question, I think just ignore any unsolicited advice. Because for me, I just found that was the biggest damage to my confidence when I first got TAO, because I got so much of it and it was all conflicting. So I think, you know, unless you're asking somebody for their advice, and you'll usually ask somebody who you trust, and, you know, probably a professional like a vet or your trainer or farrier, you know, kind of trusting that person. It's just, I just found it so confusing, and a lot of horse people, and I find myself, you know, almost doing it sometimes, you know, and I think unless someone's asking you or your advice, don't give it. And then if you need advice, ask somebody that you know that you're really going to trust and knows their stuff. I think that is important.
Absolutely. Everyone's on their own journey, and I know what you mean. It's hard when you're at a show or something and someone can't get their horse on the float and you just really want to help them, but you know, I think you need to wait until someone asks you before you can offer your advice. I'm on the same page with you there.
Yeah, it's so hard, but I see it all the time, you know, and with clients all the time. They're so confused because, you know, they're hearing 6 different things about their horse's behavior, or, you know, something they're struggling with, and it just causes so much confusion.
And I feel like it's especially the case in the horse industry. I don't know why, but it seems that everyone has an opinion on everything and wants to tell you. What were people telling you when you first got TAO that was so confusing?
Oh my gosh, he's having you on, he's dangerous, he's walking all over you, you should put a chiffney on him.
What's a chiffney?
They're metal kind of rings that you put into their mouth.
Like a rearing bit? We call it a rearing bit in Australia.
Yeah, I would assume. And it just, you know, but then my farrier said to me, you know, kind of, God, never put a chiffney on him. He'll break his jaw because he'd just bolt. I mean, I never would anyway. No. But my mum went into a tack shop for me and said, I can't remember what I sent her in to buy, but she said to the girls, you know, she's bought this new horse, it's being really difficult. Oh no. And she came home with a chiffney. I was like, you take that back. I never, you know, but it just shows, you know, again, advice, she's not horsey. She didn't know. But yeah, I so many different things. Honestly, it's emotional. And actually, I think it all stemmed from a traumatic weaning and joint problems. All of his behavioural problems, kind of, the root cause was that. So, wow, you know, it was a tricky time. Yeah, I cried a lot in those days.
And I'm just thinking about all the people that are getting training advice from the tack store salesperson.
Yeah, I know. But then, you know, but also even sometimes vets, you know, the advice my vets were giving me about his behaviour was not anything that now I would kind of support at all.
The tricky one, I suppose, behaviour isn't really their expertise.
No, but a lot of people will listen, to them because, they are the experts on horse health and things. And I think it's good now that there's more knowledge out there, but there definitely needs to be more from all professionals, I think, on horse behaviour.
I do think it's evolving slowly though, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So definitely. Can you tell us something you once did with horses that you now no longer do, and why is that?
This is a tricky one. The kind of first thing I thought about was I used to put jumps up really, really high just to show that I could, and that I was, brave, just so that I could get the picture on Facebook or Instagram, which obviously I feel really bad about now. And I think kind of having a horse with joint issues has made me reassess a lot of things like that. Trotting and cantering on very hard ground, absolute no. I'm very, very picky about the ground I use with him. And yeah, if I ever get another horse that I can jump, I will not ever, do things for my ego. Definitely horse first.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think I've seen you post about that on Instagram actually.
Yeah. And that it's just, you see it a lot. I see it, and it's a lot with young equestrians, and that was me. I was doing those things and I wasn't thinking about the horse at all. And I think that's just, it's partly being young, and it's partly the equestrian environment. It's better now than it was then, but I still see it, kind of whacking jumps right to the top of the wings just to prove you can, and on a horse that's probably not fit enough and strong enough, or maybe not the kind of horse that's bred for jumping that big. All
and
of
then
that
they
makes a difference.
overface the horse and then create other issues, and all for Instagram.
All for Instagram, I know.
So on another note, what are your thoughts on the bits versus bitless debate?
Well, I think if I didn't own Teo, I would probably be against bits. But again, I have to use one with him out hacking, because if he sees another horse and we're on our own, it's still quite a new thing for us to be out on our own, and he has bolted before and fractured my back. So, sometimes I can't control the environment. I can keep him calm if I can control everything, and he's very safe, and I hacked him bitless for a long time, but kind of when I broke my back, that just proved to me that I can't always control everything, and he's got very deep rooted trauma that I can't fix completely at the moment, maybe one day, but I think it's more important about the hands that use it. And I really like the quote, only those that don't need one should use a bit, because I think, it can inflict pain. They've done so many studies on that, but I know that Teo isn't uncomfortable with a bit in his mouth. He doesn't show any signs of kind of stress signals or discomfort. I'm so aware when I'm holding the reins, and most of the time they're just completely loose, just one hand, but it's there in an emergency if I need it. And I would rather that I put a feel on that than him gallop 3 miles home over concrete. I think that would be more detrimental to him, or, heaven forbid, he could hurt somebody. He could get hit by a car. Yeah. I think you always have to weigh up, and again, if I was somebody looking at me, I would say, well, she needs a bit for control, but what's the alternative? You leave them in a field, and maybe I'll need to use it for control once in 6 months. When we come across a horse out hacking, it's not like you're holding on to him the whole time. No, and I think you have to be realistic, and he's really taught me that, because as I said, if I didn't own him, I would probably but it's individual circumstances. It's where you're hacking. If you have to go down a main road, there's got to be a sense kind of being realistic about it. And I've had a lot of conversations like this with people, and I just kind of, I think I felt very pressured to be bitless all the time, and that's why I was bitless all the time. I'm always bitless in the arena, absolutely, because I feel there's no way he can go there. But I did, he did bolt and I fractured my back. So now that's what we do.
I think it's interesting that you were pressured to be bitless. I feel like it's often the other way around. Like I would get strange looks for riding bitless out, in public.
Yeah. Well, this is more from Instagram, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Being positive reinforcement, I would love to be bitless all the time in an ideal world. And I do, there's often posts about it. And again, I feel like I have to defend myself about it. But, if I look at how little pressure I use, I barely even hold the reins, and I put a head collar underneath so I can clip. I'll often ride in the head collar and then clip to the bit if I need it.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things. I'm doing what I believe is best for me and him. And I think with owners, you're the one that loves them. You're not it's very easy to look at somebody and think for anything, well, I wouldn't do that. But you have to trust the person that loves that horse. That's important, I think.
And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's just an individual thing, it depends on the horse. So I like what you said about that. So what are some of the biggest mistakes you see people making with horses?
I think forcing something, if the horse doesn't understand it, when they'll kind of willingly offer if you set up the situation correctly. Mm-hmm. So often, I know I did this when I was kind of in a previous life in a riding school.
Yeah.
And we'd be working on something like shoulder in and the horse wouldn't do it. So you kind of increase pressure and pull this rein and kick that leg. Instead of, and then the horse, I remember I had one lesson where my instructor said, look, just stop, Lucy, because she's going to chuck you off in a minute. Understandably, because I was just pulling this way and kicking that leg and she had no idea what I was talking about. Whereas now, I would just set it up really easy, twist your pelvis, and then the horse follow. It's just things like that. I think I see a lot getting frustrated when instead of applying more pressure, think, okay, what can I do to make this clearer to the horse? How can I set this up so that is their answer to the problem?
Absolutely. It might sound bizarre, but I actually taught my horses lateral work at the halt first, because it's like, can you put your shoulders here? Great. Can you put your hindquarters here? Great. Now what about a bit of flexion? Awesome. All of those parts work independently. That's super. Now we can try the walk.
That's such a good idea, definitely. And I think there's always, it's just kind of horses do push you to be creative, to think outside the box. And as you'll know, when you meet new horses all the time, you always have to find another way to do something. And that's great. I love the challenge of that.
So what is something that you believe is true that a lot of horse people disagree with?
Probably that a horse is stressed in certain situations. Now, I know that sounds really weird, but the one thing I've really had to kind of fight about is when I'm saying Teo's stressed, people are like, no, he's not. He's fine. Because they don't understand calming signals. They don't necessarily, they'll see a stressed horse as one that is running around, screaming their head off, tail in the air, very tense. But for Teo, he's stressed if he walks around his box once, or he rubs his head on his leg, really, or he's blinking a lot and or eating very fast. That is a stressed horse. And I constantly am having to, all through, he was very obvious in the beginning, whereas now, I'm like, oh gosh, he's stressed. I need to do something about it, because I know that if I don't at that early stage, it's going to escalate. And then once he goes over his threshold, that's it. It takes a lot to then bring him down again. So that's probably, I think, and out teaching as well, you see it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And often when I'm out with kind of new people that aren't familiar with my way of training, they'll say, oh, your horse is so calm. And I'm like, this is her stressed. Like, she's stressed right now. Totally. But from that question, I'd like to know from you, you mentioned stress signals and calming signals. Do you think horses can have their own independent stress and calming signals, like that's unique to them?
Oh, that's really interesting. I think that I know that with Teo and with other horses I work with, they'll have kind of a go-to signal that might differ from another horse, but I think it's always within the list of particular signals. So Teo is a box walker, he doesn't weave, whereas there's another horse on the yard that weaves. So that's his go-to kind of coping mechanism, I guess. And Teo's also is to, if he gets pushed over threshold, he just bolts, he's gone. Whereas another horse might rear up. It's kind of individual. Like Teo very rarely will rear as an option, thankfully. But they all have their different signals, I think.
Yeah, and some are very mouthy, or some are tail swishes kind of thing. So exactly, they each have their own kind of go-to signal. Definitely.
So
on another note, what horse-related purchase has most positively impacted your life in the last 12 months?
So does this have to be a Teo product or something?
It can be
horsey in general.
Anything horsey in general.
Okay, definitely fleece line chaps. Oh my goodness, so this winter my legs have been so warm. Every other winter I've got home and they've just been frozen. And it's taken me hours and hours to warm up. And, you can't get in the shower when you get home because it would just burn your skin, because it's very cold here. You probably don't have this problem.
No, I don't think they even sell fleece line chaps in Australia.
Oh, I'm so jealous. You have no idea. Honestly, our winter goes on forever. But anyway, this is the first year, because I've put so much money into Teo. He gets most of it just to keep him going. I very rarely buy anything for myself. And this year I was like, no, I really, especially when you're out teaching all day in the freezing cold and wind, I was like, no, this year I'm going to really treat myself. And best thing I've ever bought.
We don't have fleece lined chaps, but we do have fleece lined breeches. Have you got those?
No, that's next on my list, actually. I've heard that they're very good. Good combination together.
It does get cold here in Australia in the winter, and I'm in Adelaide, which is at the bottom, so closer to like more cold areas, I guess. But it doesn't really get below zero, like ever. So and I've never seen the snow. So
well, again, that's not a bad thing. Snow is amazing unless you have horses, and then it's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, how do you even go doing work with your horse in the snow?
Well, Teo's barefoot, so luckily I could take him out hacking, but it freezes the ground, and because we have so much rain, the fields are really rutted, so it makes it, a nightmare. And most people don't even turn their horses out when it's snowing here. I think it's different if you're, in Sweden or somewhere where you have snow for months on end, and the horses are used to it, and it's a nightmare even trying to get to the stables because all the roads are icy, and we're just not prepared for it here because we only really get it once a year.
Wow.
It's a nightmare.
Yes, well, we do have like week-long heat waves here, which can be a struggle for the horses. So
yes,
and for the humans.
That's true.
So if you could have dinner with any 3 horse people, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
So I think I would very much like to have dinner with Kathy Sierra, because I think she's awesome, and hopefully I'll get to meet her one day. Also Tara from Unbridled Goddess, and Emily Frost from Kiros Way, because I just think they'd have such interesting conversations, especially as Kathy's very science-based, and both Tara and Emily are kind of more spiritual. I just think I'd just like to watch that dinner party. I think it would be really interesting.
That would be super interesting. And I've got Tara coming up on the podcast, so that's going to be really good. Yeah.
She's amazing. I'm really hoping to go and visit her as well at some point. I had planned for this summer, but because of COVID, there's no traveling, which is a shame.
Yeah, it does suck. I did plan to go to Europe last year, actually, but obviously COVID ruined that.
Definitely.
If you could turn back the time and talk to yourself 10 or 20 years ago, what would you tell yourself and why?
So to look after myself more. So going back to the workaholic thing, because always put my work I always put my work and Teo first. And I got really ill. I got the chronic fatigue because I was getting up at, I think, 5 o'clock or 4:30 to do him before going up to London, working a full day. And I used to not finish work till 11 o'clock in the evening sometimes, and then I'd do it all again. And I think you can't give your horse what they need if you're not kind of in a good place yourself. So I definitely would tell myself to have a better work-life balance, definitely.
Yeah. Sounds like that's something you're still kind of working on as well. Do you still have the chronic fatigue, or is it something you have to manage? How does that work?
Yeah, it's really hard because I also have thyroid and vitamin D like problems going on. So I'm not sure how much of it is the chronic fatigue and how much of it is that. I'm a lot better than I was before. I mean, I'm getting better all the time, so hopefully it will just. But I relapse when I slip back into that workaholic mode, which is really hard. You know, I need to rest. I find resting really difficult. Probably like a lot of horse people.
I was going to say, you're not alone on that one. I'm exactly the same. How are you continuing to learn about horses? What are you currently studying? How often? Do you have a coach? Can you tell us more about that?
So annoyingly, I can't really have lessons with Teo because of his joints. I never know which is a good day for him, and he could only really do half an hour anyway, which is a shame because I would love to go out, take him out to clinics. I did that when I got him. But I'm obviously learning from Teo every day. He's my constant. I have a new problem with him all the time. You know, he keeps me ticking over. I learn from clients' horses, like I'm sure you do as well, all the time. Instagram is just a constant source of inspiration and knowledge. I also read a lot of research papers. I find on the Facebook groups a lot of the time on some of those, there are some really interesting articles that are posted there, and also books. I've got the connection training book that I'm going to start reading. And obviously Kathy Sierra's courses, her intrinsic course, I think, which is closed now. I've done that, and the pain science course, which I'm still halfway through, which I need to do. I just find that Teo needs to be in a good place for me to do, you know, to keep. Yeah. And he's been kind of up and down this year. So I've got that, and I really want to get out and do. I want to do some bodywork courses. I'm really interested in that. I think there's just so many things you can do. It's really hard to just focus on one thing, because like you must be the same. But I went to a local classical dressage riding school, and I did. I had a lesson there, and I want to have more. But obviously we've had lockdown, so I haven't been able to. And I found that really interesting. That's really what I want to develop, I think, is my dressage. I would love to get to a higher level with that. That's the aim anyway.
Yeah, nice. Who was the classical trainer that you went to? Or
so Alex Gash, she runs a Le Monde riding school here. It's quite well known locally, and I've got a pocket of clients, so I go and do a clinic and then I have a lesson on the way home.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, it's good. And I know it's the opposite of kind of the what Kathy's doing. Yeah. But the reason I want to do it is so I can learn the movements, and then I can work out. I know what to feel for, and I can kind of find my own way to do it. But you know, you need to have a horse that's capable and at that level of training. And I can't afford a second horse at the moment. And you know, to get another horse to the level where you can start learning those things, I just don't have time.
And sometimes it's best to learn on a horse that already is familiar with those movements as well, rather than teaching them those movements. Now, who was the author of the connection training book that you mentioned?
So Hannah Weston. Oh my gosh, so I'm going to have a brain block. Hannah Weston and somebody else. Oh, no,
I can look it up and put it in the show notes. That's fine.
I feel really bad. I haven't started it yet. I've had it on my iPad for a year. I just have, like I said, other things. You know, you have to be in the right place to take in new knowledge, I think.
That's so true. And which were the Facebook groups that you mentioned?
So empowered equestrians, or empowered equines, and clicker training horses, there's always great articles that come up in those. I'm not on Facebook very much because I think for mental health and things, I've taken it off my phone. But when I am on there, I don't know about you, but I find Instagram is a very positive place, whereas Facebook can sometimes be quite dark.
Absolutely, I have found that. Yeah, for sure. There was something else when you mentioned the connection training, Kathy Sierra, Facebook groups. Oh, you mentioned, you've got to be in the right headspace to learn new things. I will hear of a book, someone will come on my podcast and recommend a book, and I'll buy the book and I'll start reading it, and then someone else will mention a course and I'll buy that course and I'll start that. It's so hard because you want to learn from everyone, you want to absorb as much knowledge as possible, but sometimes you just need to focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah, definitely, especially because sometimes it is conflicting and you need to kind of work out in your head, and test it for yourself on your horse. I think that's really important. I love to get Taylor's feedback on things that I'm doing. Definitely.
Yeah, and I used to get quite confused and conflicted when I would, read almost polar opposite opinions on training. And now I've kind of accepted that, no, everyone's on their own journey. I'm on my own journey. I'm just taking bits and pieces from everyone else and, creating my own style of what I need and what my horses need and what my clients' horses need. So
exactly.
It's really good.
It's very important.
So you've already mentioned a few people, but is there anyone else who is your current inspiration? Like even on Instagram, who do you follow? Who do you admire?
Oh, so many people. Everyone I follow. Basically, some people are really big trainers. Some are clients, friends who are doing really good things. Obviously, Nora, Horse Balance. I was really lucky to go and visit her a few years ago. And yeah, I think what she does is amazing. Is it Anya Baran? I follow her. Oh, she's amazing. I really want to do one of her courses. She obviously, I love her work. It's so soft and light. I just think that, so many people. Ava Romat, I was again very lucky to go and meet her a few years ago. I love her work. With Sheilas, it's amazing to get a Haflinger to do anything in a neck rope on grass, I think is amazing. But yeah, there's so many people that are doing amazing things with horses at different ends of the spectrum. Some using negative reinforcement, some using positive reinforcement, some using, but it's just, I think you have to look at the horse, how they feel about what's being done to them, and I always look at that. I don't look at what trick someone's doing or what movement. I will look at what the horse thinks about what's going on, and then kind of if the horse is happy and willing, then I'm very much inspired by things.
Yes, and I guess we're always experimenting, really, even though we might have our own system or our own tools in our toolbox. We are practicing them, we are applying them and seeing how the horse responds to that, and then pivoting and reapproaching in what the horse needs. So I do like drawing inspiration from lots of different people, as do you. And I love that you mentioned Anya, because I do have her lateral movements course. It's very good. And
good.
I'm a bit of an Anya addict. So she just did a podcast on an episode, an interview on, it's called Come Along for the Ride. I think that's the name of the podcast. It's very good. It was only released about a week ago. So definitely have a listen.
Definitely check that out. Thank you.
Now, if your horses could talk with words, what do you think they would say to you? I mean, not horses, Teo. If your horse could talk with words, what do you think he would say to you, and what would you like to say to him?
Well, he would definitely say, let me eat more grass. That is everything with him is about food. And, that is probably the only time I really say no to him. If he's got to be muzzled, sorry, he needs to be muzzled. And out hacking, yes, you can have some. I always let him eat something, but not the whole time. Otherwise, we would never move. So that is our biggest sticking point, I think, that we kind of have discussions about sometimes. And for me, I would probably say to him, stop being mean to other horses, because he can be really mean. I had him tested to see if he's a rig last year, because he was exhibiting a lot of stallion-like behaviours, especially, you know, breaking into the field with the mares and charging off the gelding that was in there with them. And that causes me the biggest amount of stress, because he's constantly stressed if there's mares in season, and you know, I'm worrying, is he going to get kicked? Is he going to kick another horse? So that would probably be it. Although he is managed now, he's on a supplement, and we've moved him right away from the mares. So that seems to have worked, touch wood, for now.
That's good. Just something that popped up then when you were saying how he's motivated by food. I wonder if you came across a horse that was not food motivated, would you consider doing like purely negative reinforcement?
I think I would probably have them investigated for ulcers first, because I think that can be a really key reason why they're not interested in food. I mean, most horses are, although there is a horse on our yard that is not food motivated. And he does have ulcers and they're being treated. So I just think that's interesting. And I wonder if afterwards he would be. I would try desperately to find something that they want. If that's mince or carrot, apple, I would try everything first, because I just find I'm more comfortable using it, and I just find it works so well. But then I would, if all else failed, then yes, I would. And sometimes you have to, you know, if there's an emergency situation, like I had a horse that desperately needed eye drops in his eye. He had an eye infection. He was rearing up. He was very stressed about the whole thing. He was being dangerous. I mix negative and positive reinforcement for that kind of thing, because it's time sensitive. I would love to do it slowly at the horse's pace, and you know, but we mix both, and it worked. He had the eye drops in 20 minutes, I think it took, you know, because that, you know, was the better option in my opinion at that time. So I think there's definitely situations and certain horses where and I have to use negative reinforcement with Teo sometimes with grass, otherwise we would never move. We would literally just stay in one place and eat, you know. It just depends on the horse.
I do wonder though when people say, oh, I can't use positive reinforcement because my horse isn't motivated by food, and I'm like, but they're horses, they eat most of the time. Like
no, exactly, you know, have a bag of grass, I'm sure that you know, it is hard. It's one of those, you know, you just have to do the best you can at the time, and as long as you're putting the horse first, then I think that you can't really go wrong.
That's it. And I'm a believer that, you know, 95% of people love their horses, and they're just trying to do the right thing by them, and they just don't know a better way yet. And I'm probably in that category as well. So,
but me too, you know, it's, you know, it's a journey, it's growing, and as long as you love the horse, again, you can't go wrong. You're doing the best you can. They're very forgiving. You know, some of the things I did in the early days of the Teo, I'm horrified about, and I'm still having to pay for those mistakes. But I did them in what I believed at the time was the best thing for him. And
we live and learn. So can you tell us what is next for you, and where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? What is your ultimate goal with horses?
Well, I would love to be able to travel and teach. I love traveling, and I haven't really been able to do it much since I've had Teo because he's so high maintenance. I'm scared to ever leave him. That would be my goal, is to be able to go around the world, meet lots of different people, meet lots of different horses, be inspired by different people. And I guess my ultimate goal would be to get to a high level of dressage, bridleless. I would really love to do that, as, you know, using positive reinforcement, training everything, you know, kind of having them offer it first. So that's my life goal. But obviously I need a horse that can do that.
Yeah, sounds like that might be on the cards then at some point.
I hope so.
I would love to be able to ride Grand Prix with a neck rope as well. I think that would be so cool. Or even no neck rope. That would be the ultimate.
Yeah, and have a horse really willing,
yes,
wanting to. Just nothing beats that feeling. Teo loves, when he goes into his extended trot, he just absolutely flies. And I would love that, to keep progressing. But yeah, with a horse that it's not fair to ask him to do more, I don't think.
Yeah. Okay, so before we wrap up, can you tell us where our guests can find out more about you?
So probably my Facebook page, Lucy Chester Horsemanship, or my Instagram, which is the same, Lucy Chester Horsemanship, is where I post kind of more educational bits and pieces. And then obviously my main Instagram with me and Teo is Haflinger at Liberty is our handle there. I do have a website, but it's very out of date. I'm waiting for my new computer till I can update it.
Well, tell us what it is anyway, because it'll be in the show notes, and if you update it in the future, people can access it.
Thank you. So it's www.lucychesterhorsemanship.com or .co.uk, one of the two. But yeah, It's very out of date.
That's all good. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It was a really interesting chat. I just love connecting with horse trainers like yourself, and I'm sure I'll continue to follow your journey on Instagram, even though you're not as active now. But really looking forward to
I will be after lockdown when I can actually get some photos and video footage. Then I will be posting more, and my new computer so I can edit it.
Yes, I'm excited to see what you get up to with Teo in the future, and perhaps a new horse. We'll see what happens. And if you ever teach overseas, you'll have to come to Australia and do a clinic one day.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome to come here if you make your way to London.
That would be amazing. Well, thank you again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Horsemanship Breakthroughs podcast. Make sure you hit subscribe so you get notified every time a new episode is released. And if you've learned even just one small thing from today's show, I would really appreciate if you could leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you have any questions from today's show, suggestions for future episodes, or just want to reach out and say hi, I would love to connect with you on Instagram at Amalia_horses. Remember to also register for my free connection and communication mini course at amaliadempsey.com.